The seafaring adventures of Carthage have always seemed to historians like a parade of heroism, greatness, and discoveries. But the truth, as is often the case, is much darker and more ironic. Imagine that you are not the hero of an epic, nor even a captain, but just an ordinary participant in a Carthaginian trading voyage where every amphora smells of rotten fish. Greek merchants are trickier than any pirate, and luck itself goes on. Vacation for the entire journey. But before we begin, please give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments which city you are watching from and what time it is there. I am always curious to see who has joined us. Now, get comfortable. We are about to begin. You stand on the bustling dock of Carthage, where the smell of fish, sweat, and desperation seems to outmatch even the harsh Mediterranean sun. Today is the day you, an ordinary observer with no particular talent for navigation or bargaining, find yourself recruited, willingly or otherwise, by one of Carthage's less reputable mariners. His name, you learn, is Hanno, and he is not famous for heroism or romance, but for a persistent cough and an uncanny ability to turn a simple errand into a 6-month ordeal. The ship that awaits you is not the proud flagship of Carthage's navy, nor even a merchantman built for glory, but something closer to a drifting market stall with a mast. Its hull is stained with the memory of too many cargoes, olive oil, salt fish, and the occasional unlucky goat. The planks creak ominously underfoot, and the figurehead, once a proud horse's head, is now a weathered lump that might as well be a potato. Your fellow crew members look as though they, too, have been swept up from the gutters of the city, a motley collection of Phoenician, Libyan, and one especially argumentative Numidian. Hanno greets you with a toothless grin and immediately sets you to work, instructing you in the ancient Carthaginian art of hauling amphorae filled with rancid fish oil into the hold. He explains at great length that these amphorae must be stacked in a particular manner, for if one should topple during a storm, the gods alone can save you from the consequences. There is, of course, no storm today, only a gentle wind, and a sky so blue it seems almost sarcastic. But Hanno is not a man to be swayed by favorable conditions. He insists on ritual, on order, on checking the knots of the rigging no fewer than 3 times before the sun has even reached its zenith. While you work, you overhear the crew bickering in a medley of languages. They trade insults and wagers on how many days it will take before something, an oar, a barrel, a crew member, falls irretrievably overboard. An old Libyan, with a fondness for superstition, spits into the sea and mutters that Carthage is cursed, that every voyage is a wager against the gods, and that only fools and slaves ever truly leave home. You nod as though you understand, but privately wonder whether it is the gods or simply that abysmal maintenance of Carthaginian vessels that ensures so many never return. The harbor itself is a world of chaos. Carthaginian officials patrol the docks, counting amphorae and levying taxes on anything that looks remotely profitable. They keep meticulous records on scrolls so fragile that a single drop of salt water would reduce them to pulp, and yet their authority is absolute. You watch as they shake down a group of Greek merchants who protest in melodious, practiced tones. Hanno leans over and whispers that the Greeks always try to bribe their way out of port taxes, but Carthaginian officials are paid by the word, and so the longer the argument, the greater the bribe required to end it. By noon, the loading is complete. The cargo includes salted fish, olive oil, dried figs, wool, and a crate of mysterious contents, which Hanno assures you contains important diplomatic gifts. Given the stains and the curious smell, you suspect otherwise. The ship is blessed, or at least doused with a handful of seawater and an unintelligible prayer. The crew embarks, and the ropes are finally cast off. The dock recedes, and with it, all certainty. As Carthage slips behind you, its stone walls and red tiled roofs shining in the merciless sun, you cannot help but feel a pang of regret. The city, for all its squalor and bureaucracy, offered something solid. Now there is only the open sea, a blue expanse that seems to mock your bravado. The first hours are uneventful. Hanno stations himself at the prow, watching the horizon as if expecting it to suddenly become interesting. The sailors fall into their routines, which consist mainly of avoiding work and complaining about the food. You try your hand at steering, only to discover that the rudder is more suggestion than mechanism. The ship wanders, much as you suspect you will, in a wide and pointless arc. As dusk approaches, Hanno gathers the crew to recite a litany of regulations. No sailor may whistle after dark, as it angers the wind gods. No one may mention by name the monsters rumored to dwell in the deep. All must agree that Carthaginian navigation is the envy of the world, even as the ship drifts perilously close to a patch of floating debris that looks suspiciously like last year's lost cargo. Dinner consists of dried bread, a handful of olives, and, inevitably, salted fish. Conversation lags. One sailor begins to recount a tale of a merchant ship that vanished between Carthage and Sicily. Hanno silences him with a glare, muttering that the less said about lost ships, the better. You realize that here, fear is not merely tolerated, but cultivated, an essential seasoning in the diet of every mariner. Night falls, bringing with it the first true sense of what it means to be at sea. The stars appear in unfamiliar patterns, the horizon blurs, and the steady slap of waves becomes the only rhythm. The crew, too tired or too superstitious to speak, withdraws into their cloaks. Hanno remains at the prow, unmoved by darkness, muttering prayers to Baal Hammon and counting, softly, the days until the next port. You lie awake, wondering what the future holds. The adventure you were promised already seems hollow, its romance eroded by the realities of bad food, worse company, and a captain whose only gift is making every day feel longer than the last. But it is too late for regrets. The city is gone, the sea stretches on, and you are now, for better or worse, a traveler in the company of Carthaginian mariners. You wake on the second day to the dull ache of a back that never knew how many different ways a plank could jab a sleeping body. The sun has already begun its relentless climb, transforming the deck into a mosaic of harsh light and shadow. You quickly learn that in the world of Carthaginian seafaring, luxury is measured not in gold, but in the thickness of your cloak and the absence of rats in your breakfast. The days merge into one another, indistinguishable save for subtle variations in misery. The routine is as immutable as the law. The crew rises with the dawn, mumbling a mixture of prayers and complaints. Breakfast, if it can be called such, consists of bread so hard it threatens your teeth with every bite, and dried dates that seem to have been selected for their remarkable resistance to both rot and flavor. The work is monotonous. You scrub the deck, untangle ropes, and haul buckets of seawater with a vigor that wanes after the first hour and vanishes entirely by midday. Hanno, as ever, presides over the ship like a particularly vengeful priest. He demands silence during his endless inventory of cargo and bristles at any sign of idleness. Once, when a young sailor dares to whistle a cheerful tune, Hanno delivers a lecture on the history of naval disasters, each attributed to a single, ill timed note. You listen, trying to look both attentive and apologetic, and quietly vow never to express joy on deck again. At night, the ship transforms. The oppressive heat of the day gives way to a bone deep chill. The crew huddles together, sharing whatever warmth and gossip they can muster. It is here, in these aimless hours, that you learn the true art of boredom. The stories are always the same: a merchant lost at sea, a miraculous escape from pirates, a storm so fierce that even the gods averted their eyes. You quickly realize that these tales are not meant to entertain, but to remind you, relentlessly, of all the ways you might die. Occasionally, something breaks the monotony. One morning, you are awakened by frantic shouting. You rush to the deck to see a monstrous jellyfish, larger than any you have ever imagined, pulsing in the water beside the ship. The crew pokes at it with long poles, debating whether it is an omen of disaster or simply another thing to complain about. Hanno, ever practical, instructs the men to ignore it and return to their duties. The jellyfish, unbothered by mortal concerns, drifts away, trailing long, ghostly tentacles behind it. On another day, you spot what appears to be a small, empty boat adrift on the waves. The crew gathers, each member offering their own theory: pirates, plague, divine punishment. Hanno, always cautious, orders the vessel to be avoided. You watch as it drifts out of sight, a silent reminder that not all who set out on these waters find their way home. The sea itself is a study in contradiction. It can be glass smooth one moment, reflecting the sky in a perfect, infuriating calm, and then, with no warning, explode into chaos. You experience both. The days of calm are the worst, as the ship sits becalmed and the heat grows unbearable. The crew invents new chores to stave off madness, sorting beans, untangling already untangled nets, counting and recounting amphorae. You spend one entire afternoon listening to Hanno recite the official Carthaginian regulations on the export of wool. It is as thrilling as it sounds. When storms come, they arrive with a vengeance. The sky darkens, the wind howls, and the ship becomes a plaything for forces far greater than any human. You learn the true meaning of fear as waves crash over the deck and the sails snap in the wind. The crew moves with a desperate energy, lashing down cargo, tightening ropes, and shouting instructions that are swallowed by the roar of the sea. Hanno, for once, seems almost alive, barking orders and cursing the gods with equal fervor. After the storm passes, you take stock. The ship has survived, though a few amphorae have vanished, and the deck is littered with debris. The crew, exhausted but triumphant, shares a meal of hard cheese and bitter wine, toasting not to fortune, but to survival itself. You join in, surprised to find yourself almost grateful for the ordeal. It is better, you decide, to be terrified than bored. Some days, when the wind is right and the sky is clear, you can almost convince yourself that there is beauty in this life. The sea stretches out in all directions, endless and indifferent, and the stars at night are so bright they seem to mock the ambitions of mortals. But such moments are fleeting. The reality of Carthaginian seafaring is always waiting, a dull ache in your bones and a persistent itch in your mind. The crew, for all their grumbling, is a source of unexpected camaraderie. You learn the names and histories of your fellow travelers. A Libyan who claims to have once dined with a king, a Phoenician with a collection of improbable scars, a Numidian who spends his nights carving strange symbols into the railings. They are to a man experts in the art of complaint, but you find their company oddly comforting. Together, you form a community bound not by choice or affection, but by the shared ordeal of survival. Every so often, the monotony is broken by the appearance of another ship on the horizon. The crew watches with a mixture of curiosity and suspicion, debating whether it is friend, foe, or simply another poor soul lost at sea. Sometimes the ships pass without incident, exchanging nothing but a nod and a shouted insult. Other times, there is tense negotiation, trading goods or news, always wary of treachery. There are moments of genuine humor, though they tend toward the grim. The cook, for instance, insists that his fish stew wards off sea monsters. No one believes him, but everyone eats the stew, just in case. Hanno, ever the pessimist, maintains that the true danger at sea is not monsters or storms, but bureaucracy. He tells stories of voyages ruined by a missing stamp or an unpaid tax, and you suspect that in Carthage this may well be true. As the days turn into weeks, you lose track of time. The routines become second nature, the fears dull to a background hum. You find yourself strangely changed, not braver, not wiser, but somehow less concerned with the fate that awaits you. The sea has a way of stripping away illusions, leaving only the essentials: food, shelter, and the hope of seeing land again. One night, as you watch the moon rise over a sea, so calm it seems unreal, you realize that you have become a true Carthaginian mariner, if only by default. The romance of adventure is gone, replaced by a weary acceptance of fate. You are no longer a passenger, but a participant in the endless, tedious, occasionally terrifying cycle that is life at sea. The journey continues. The horizon remains as distant as ever, and Hanno assures you that your destination, Sicily, he claims, though you suspect even he is not entirely sure, grows nearer with each passing day. You nod, say the proper prayers, and prepare for another morning of hard bread and harder labor. You have survived thus far. Whether this is a triumph or merely a postponement of the inevitable is a question best left for another night. Landfall, when it finally comes, is neither dramatic nor joyful. There is no fanfare, no victorious cheer, not even a particularly enthusiastic seagull to greet your arrival. The crew simply points to a shadowy smudge on the horizon and announces that Sicily, jewel of the Greeks, is near. You, having spent so many sleepless nights dreaming of solid earth, find yourself oddly disappointed. The land is not golden, it is rocky, irregular, and faintly threatening, like a promise you suspect will be broken. Hanno, ever the merchant, becomes uncharacteristically animated as the ship approaches the port. He polishes his one surviving sandal and gives you a lecture on the cunning and duplicity of Greek traders. He insists that they can haggle a man out of his own name and will try to shortchange you on everything from oil to olives. The crew exchanges knowing looks and pockets whatever small valuables they still possess. You have nothing to hide except your own low expectations. The Sicilian port is a place of forced order. Unlike Carthage's sprawling chaos, the Greeks maintain a kind of rigid neatness that feels faintly unnatural. Stone quays, columns, painted statues, everything is arranged with an eye for symmetry. The market is already open, a humming grid of stalls and shouting vendors. The air smells not only of salt and fish, but also of strange spices, tanned leather, and the ever present anxiety that comes from having too many rules. Disembarking, you are immediately met by a functionary draped in white linen and a scowl that could sour milk. He demands to know your business, your cargo, your origin, your purpose, and apparently your opinion of the latest tax increase. Hanno, never one to answer a question with a fact, launches into a story so convoluted you almost lose the thread yourself. The functionary's face never changes. When Hanno finishes, the man simply presents a tablet and a stylus. You are to list your goods, sign with your mark, and pay a docking fee equal to the price of your own patience. The market is a study in contrast. Greek merchants praise their olives as if they were offerings for the gods, while Carthaginian sailors grumble over every coin. Local fishermen hawk cuttlefish with 6 arms, and, according to one enthusiastic youth, the wisdom of philosophers. You watch a contest of haggling so intense it draws a crowd. It ends with both parties storming away, each declaring victory and muttering imprecations about the other's ancestry. There is little time for sightseeing. Hanno is determined to sell the cargo at a price that will not embarrass his ancestors, which means arguing for hours over every amphora of oil. You are sent to oversee the unloading, which is accomplished by a team of hired Greeks who regard you with a mixture of pity and suspicion. Each amphora is inspected, sniffed, and occasionally subjected to a ritual tasting. The supervisor, a thin man with eyebrows like a pair of angry caterpillars, finds fault with every third jar and demands a discount. While you stand on the dock, an old woman in a tattered peplus sidles up and offers to tell your fortune for a fee. You have no coins and less curiosity, but she insists, peering at your hands and declaring that you will cross water 3 times before you eat fresh bread again. This is less prophecy than logistics, but the woman is already vanishing into the crowd, cackling at some private joke. Trade in Sicily is governed by 1,000 rules, all of which are explained to you in rapid, musical Greek. There are taxes for landing, taxes for selling, taxes for using the dock, and special taxes for foreigners of questionable character, a category that seems to include the entire crew. Hanno rails against the injustice, but the Greek officials are unmoved. A scribe records every transaction in a ledger so large it requires its own donkey. You sign your name so many times, you start to doubt its spelling. Lunch is a lesson in local cuisine and disappointment. The bread is thin and sour, the olives briny to the point of hostility. A slice of cheese, offered as a delicacy, turns out to be older than several members of the crew. You chew in silence, watching the Greek traders posture and parade. Their tunics are clean, their hands soft, their voices smooth as olive oil. Hanno watches them with undisguised contempt, muttering that men who fear the sun can never be trusted. In the afternoon, a dispute erupts at the marketplace over a crate of dried figs. The Greek merchant accuses Hanno of short measure. Hanno counters that Greek weights are calibrated for theft. The argument escalates, drawing a crowd of bored sailors and market officials. Eventually, a magistrate arrives, his robes stiff with starch, his expression promising nothing but paperwork. He listens to both sides, inspects the figs, and fines both parties for disturbing the civic peace. Hanno pays in small coins, loudly cursing the entire Greek alphabet. You attempt to make sense of the city, wandering its narrow streets during a rare moment of leisure. The architecture is all columns and right angles, a geometry of pride. Statues stare at you with blank, marble disdain. Everywhere there is the sense of being watched, weighed, found wanting. You pass a temple where priests chant praises to gods whose names you cannot pronounce. A youth tries to sell you a carved statuette, swearing it brings luck at sea. Around you, the others are equally restless, eyes darting to the horizon, breaths forming tiny clouds of impatience. The elders, unable to remain silent, pass the time with quiet bickering. The crew gathers on the ship, counting coins, inventorying what remains, and nursing wounds both financial and physical. Hanno is in a foul mood, convinced that the Greeks have conspired to cheat him at every turn. He delivers a speech on the virtues of Carthaginian honesty, which provokes snickers from the crew and a withering glance from the cook. That night, you sleep on the deck, a thin blanket your only defense against the Sicilian chill. The city lights flicker on the shore, promising wealth, wisdom, and peace to those who belong. For foreigners, there is only the cold comfort of a ship and the knowledge that tomorrow the journey continues. You close your eyes, dreaming not of fortune or adventure, but simply of bread that does not taste of seawater and olives that do not sneer as you eat them. When you wake, the ship is already preparing to cast off. Sicily recedes into memory, a place of rules, of bargains lost and won, of strangers who smile as they count your coins. You take your place at the oar, steeling yourself for whatever dull, dreadful marvels the sea will bring next. Hanno promises that the worst is behind you. You suspect he is lying. In Carthaginian trade, as in life, disappointment is the only honest currency. You expect the voyage to remain tediously predictable, with only the variations of stale food and new insults to mark the passage of time. Instead, the gods, or perhaps only probability, decide it is time for something different. The wind, which for so many days only mocked your sails, now lashes at the ship with an energy that seems both personal and malicious. Clouds gather with impressive speed. Even Hanno, who has made a career of disregarding the weather, looks troubled. It is said among sailors that the Mediterranean can change its mood more swiftly than any merchant can change his price. This day, you learn the truth of that aphorism. The sky darkens to the color of spoiled wine, and the waves rise, eager to reclaim what humanity has borrowed from the sea. You are ordered to secure the cargo, always the first instinct, as though barrels of oil matter more than bone or breath. You lash ropes until your hands bleed, cursing every amphora, every coil, every decision that led you from the safety of land to the indifference of the open water. The storm does not roar, it shrieks. Rain hammers the deck, sails snap and tear. For a few brief, endless hours, you are certain that this will be the final chapter, drowned in a sea whose only mercy is its speed. You catch glimpses of your crewmates, faces contorted by effort, fear, and the realization that there will be no legend sung about this shipwreck, only a scribbled note in a distant ledger: cargo lost, crew presumed eaten by fish. At the peak of chaos, the ship shudders violently, keeling as if bowing to an invisible king. Something important, perhaps the mast, perhaps your dignity, snaps. Barrels roll. The amphorae you so carefully stacked are now missiles, shattering and slicking the deck with oil and vinegar. You cling to the rail, praying to gods you never believed in, and when the ship finally grounds with a gut wrenching crunch, it is not relief you feel, but an odd irritation that your misery will simply take a new form. Morning reveals your new reality. The ship is ruined, stranded on the rocky coast of Sardinia, its cargo strewn like an accusation along the pebbled shore. The crew is mostly alive, though none are happy about it. Hanno stands ankle deep in water, searching for his ceremonial dagger and muttering about omens. You discover, with a grim sense of humor, that even shipwreck cannot loosen the amphora wedged by your sleeping spot. It is not long before you are discovered, not by helpful fishermen or friendly locals, but by the infamous Sardinian pirates. Their arrival is as theatrical as it is inconvenient. They march down the beach, swords slung across their backs, looking more bored than menacing. Their leader, a wiry man with an improbable mustache, introduces himself in flawless Punic and inquires, almost apologetically, whether you would prefer to be ransomed, enslaved, or merely robbed. The pirates are not the monsters of myth. They are, you find, bureaucrats with swords. They catalog the survivors, itemize the salvage, and produce a schedule of ransoms that would make any tax collector weep with envy. One pirate, assigned as your minder, explains the local tariff system. There are fees for rescue, for protection, for the use of firewood, and an especially galling surcharge for the inconvenience of unexpected guests. Hanno attempts to negotiate. The pirates, displaying the patience of true civil servants, allow him to speak for the better part of an hour before presenting a bill so complex it requires its own glossary. Life among the Sardinian pirates is an exercise in bureaucratic despair. Meals, such as they are, consist of boiled fish, stale bread, and stories about the failures of previous captives. The pirates enjoy these stories immensely. You are invited to share your own tale of woe, and when you attempt irony, your audience is delighted. One pirate asks whether Carthaginian ships are always so poorly built, and another inquires if your captain is truly as unlucky as he appears. You respond that in Carthage, unlucky captains are a dime a dozen, an idiom that, after translation, loses all meaning but earns you a sympathetic slap on the back. The negotiations for your freedom drag on. Every day, a different pirate arrives to discuss the terms. One offers early release in exchange for a promise to name your firstborn after him. Another proposes a discount if you can recite the entire Carthaginian tax code from memory. You are tempted to accept both offers. Hanno, ever the optimist, insists that rescue is imminent, though from whom and why remains unclear. The days settle into a rhythm, if it can be called that. You collect driftwood, mend torn clothing, and count the ships that pass by without stopping. The pirates, for their part, seem to have tired of you. They focus instead on training for a sport that involves hurling stones at amphorae. It is, you observe, the only activity that brings them any joy. There is a certain camaraderie among the captives. One evening, over a meal of particularly pungent fish, an old sailor recounts the story of a merchant who survived 3 shipwrecks and retired rich by selling insurance to other merchants. The pirates are unimpressed. Their leader declares that the only thing less trustworthy than the sea is a Carthaginian promise. No one disagrees. You begin to notice how little separates pirate from trader, sailor from captive. All are subject to the whims of the weather, the vagaries of fortune, and the ever increasing complexity of maritime law. At times, it is difficult to remember which side you are on. You find yourself sympathizing with your captors, who complain that piracy is not what it used to be. Too many regulations, too much paperwork, not enough gratitude from those they rescue and ransom. At last, word comes that your ransom has been paid, or, more accurately, that the pirates have tired of your company and are willing to accept a nominal sum for your release. The formalities are conducted with all the ceremony of a minor religious holiday. Hanno, miraculously reunited with his ceremonial dagger, delivers a speech about the enduring spirit of Carthaginian traders. The pirates applaud, either out of politeness or because they are relieved to see the last of you. You are permitted to salvage what remains of your ship, which is not much. A few battered amphorae, some mildewed bread, and the memory of your humiliation. You leave the Sardinian shore poorer in goods, richer in caution, and burdened with stories no one in Carthage will believe. As you push the battered remains of your boat into the forgiving arms of the sea, you look back at the pirates gathered on the beach, waving you off with a mixture of pity and professional courtesy. The sea stretches before you once again, vast and indifferent. Hanno assures you that the journey home will be uneventful. You reply, with all the sincerity you can muster, that nothing in the life of a Carthaginian mariner is ever truly uneventful. Night falls, and the wind, perhaps out of sympathy, blows steady and mild. You eat the last of the stolen olives and listen to the creak of wood, the sigh of waves, and the quiet certainty that somewhere, even now, another ship is being wrecked, another ransom negotiated, another story begun. This, you realize, is the true cycle of the Mediterranean. Not heroism, not fortune, but survival, negotiation, and the endless circular bureaucracy of fate. It is with less triumph and more resignation that you and the battered remnants of your crew set course for Carthage. The ship, or what is left of it, limps over the gentle swells like a wounded animal, every creak and groan a testament to your misfortunes. Hanno, whose optimism survived pirates, but not the loss of most of his cargo, spends his time muttering arithmetic beneath his breath, tallying costs and losses with the bitterness of a man who knows precisely how little will be left after all the fees are paid. Your final days at sea are marked not by adventure, but by an odd stillness. The weather is inexplicably calm, as if even the gods have grown bored of tormenting you. The wind carries you homeward, but slowly, as though reluctant to return you to the land where your failures will be most keenly felt. You pass the time in the usual fashion, patching torn sailcloth, scraping together meals from whatever has not yet succumbed to salt or mildew, and listening to the crew as they rehearse the story they will tell their families. A story in which each man is just a bit braver, just a bit more resourceful, and in every Greek merchant or Sardinian pirate a monstrous villain. The mood aboard is heavy, but not tragic. By now, everyone has endured enough hardship to understand that tragedy is merely the background hum of seafaring life. You and your fellow survivors share a bond forged not by shared glory, but by a kind of collective embarrassment. When one man tries to toast your heroic return, he is met with silence, then laughter, then a round of impromptu poetry about the virtues of failure and the fine art of returning home with nothing. Hanno, to his credit, does not spare himself from the humor. He organizes an inventory of what is left: a cracked amphora of oil, 3 waterlogged bundles of wool, a single sandal whose mate now resides somewhere off Sardinia, and a commemorative dagger that has grown distinctly less ceremonial after its stint as a pry bar. These meager treasures are displayed with mock solemnity, and the crew votes to present them as gifts to the customs officials of Carthage in hopes of reducing the inevitable taxes. As you approach the familiar coast, the city's outline grows sharp against the morning sky. The temples and red-tiled roofs gleam with all the indifference of bureaucrats on payday. Carthage, as ever, is busy with ships arriving, departing, and sometimes sinking directly in the harbor. You are not greeted by crowds or fanfare. Instead, you are met by a port official whose only sign of emotion is the speed with which he calculates your docking fees. Disembarkation is both relief and humiliation. Each step down the gangplank is an admission that for all the risks and sufferings endured, you have returned with less than you left. The official records your ship's return in a ledger so vast and detailed that your failures are immediately submerged in the sea of other failures. Carthage is nothing if not practiced in the art of indifference. There is paperwork, of course, endless paperwork. The city has developed the recording of disappointment into a science. For every lost amphora, there is a form. For every unsold crate of wool, another. The port scribe, a man with the face of a disappointed father, quizzes you about every aspect of your journey. When you describe the pirates' system of tariffs and surcharges, he listens with interest and makes several notes. It is widely suspected that the city council uses such tales to invent new taxes for the following year. The crew disperses into the city, each man weighed down by the prospect of explaining his failures to family and creditors. Some head for the markets, hoping to trade stories for sympathy or at least a free meal. Others vanish into the maze of alleyways, intent on losing themselves among strangers. Hanno lingers on the dock, staring at the ruined ship, as if by force of will he could reconstruct both the vessel and his pride. He finally turns to you, offering a wry smile and the remains of his infamous sandal. Next time, he says, We take the overland route. You do not argue. The lesson of the sea, you have learned, is not that fortune favors the bold, but that fortune often forgets the bold entirely. Heroism is reserved for poets and politicians. The true virtue of a Carthaginian mariner is patience, not courage. You make your way through the crowded streets, the city unchanged by your absence. The market is alive with the cries of vendors hawking olives, wine, and, inevitably, tales of distant lands. A group of children run past, waving makeshift swords and pretending to be pirates. You catch the eye of an old merchant who winks and mouths the word survived. It is not a question. Home, when you reach it, is exactly as you left it. The roof still leaks, the bread is still stale, and the neighbor's dog is still the loudest creature in the district. You sit by your door, listening to the city, and reflect on all you have endured. The journey has brought you neither riches nor renown. What it has brought in abundance are stories. Stories of storms and pirates, of taxes and disappointments, of bread that tastes of salt, and nights that never seem to end. You think for a moment that you might write your own account, a lengthy, tedious epic about the futility of hope and the inevitability of paperwork. But who would read it? Carthage has little interest in the tales of losers. Even so, you begin, if only in your head. I traveled with Carthaginian sailors, endured the whims of Greeks and pirates, and returned poorer but wiser. My greatest triumph was survival, my greatest lesson that the world is governed not by destiny, but by the unyielding bureaucracy of gods and men. In the end, you sleep, and in your dreams, you are once again on the sea, the ship whole, the sky clear, and your pockets full of imaginary gold. You wake, as always, to the unromantic clatter of a city that cares nothing for adventure, but everything for the ledgers of return. Thus concludes your voyage, not with a glorious homecoming, but with the quiet, enduring certainty that in Carthage, and perhaps everywhere else, the greatest accomplishment is simply to come back at all.